Picture this: a crowded royal banquet hall in ancient Babylon, full of music, wine, and flickering torchlight. Gold cups shine on the tables, stolen long ago from the temple in Jerusalem, and everyone is cheering as the king raises one higher than the rest. Then, in a breath, the room freezes. A hand, only a hand, begins to write glowing letters on the palace wall. No one understands the words, but everyone feels the terror. This is the famous Bible story of the writing on the wall. And behind it lies a deep mystery of language, history, and the meaning of power. The story comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 5, and it takes place at the end of the Babylonian Empire. A king named Belshazzar hosts a massive feast, surrounded by nobles, wives, and concubines, while outside the city walls an enemy army is closing in. Babylon has been powerful for decades. So powerful that its leaders feel untouchable. During the party, Belshazzar calls for the sacred cups taken from the temple of the God of Israel, and he uses them for a drinking game while praising other gods made of gold and silver. It is at that moment that the mysterious hand appears and scratches out a message on the plaster of the wall. The king sees it and his confidence collapses. The text describes his knees knocking together and his face turning pale. He calls for all the wise men of Babylon to read the words and give their meaning. These men are experts in languages, symbols, and dreams, the kind of people you expect to understand any riddle, yet this time they fail. The words are visible, the letters are clear, but the message remains hidden. This is the first layer of the mystery. Why can no one in Babylon read a message that is written in their own world, their own empire, their own script? This is where Daniel enters the story. Daniel is an exile from Judah, someone taken from his homeland when Babylon conquered Jerusalem. He has already interpreted dreams for an earlier king, and he is known as someone in whom, as the story puts it, the spirit of the holy God lives. When Daniel is brought before Belshazzar, he does something unexpected. Before explaining the words, he retells the history of Belshazzar's predecessor, the powerful King Nebuchadnezzar, who was humbled when he became arrogant. Daniel reminds Belshazzar that power is not permanent, and that he should have learned from the past. Only after this historical reminder does Daniel turn to the glowing message on the wall. The words written there are famous MENE MENE TEKEL UPHARSIN. These words come from Aramaic, a cousin of Hebrew, that was widely used in the ancient Near East. On one level, they look like a list of weights used in business and trade. MENE is related to a MENE, tekel is connected to a shekel, and upharsin is related to half a MENE. Imagine seeing on a wall the words MENE, shekel, and half. Anyone who knew the language could possibly recognize these as units of money or weight. Yet knowing the vocabulary does not guarantee understanding the message. The wise men may have seen familiar words, yet they could not grasp the story behind them. Daniel takes these familiar terms and reveals a second layer of meaning through wordplay. He explains that MENE means that God has numbered Belshazzar's days and brought his kingdom to an end. Tekel means that the king has been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, a form of the word hidden inside. Upharsin means that the kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So the list of weights becomes a poetic judgment. Numbered, weighed, and divided. The writing on the wall turns into a small poem of warning. This is one of the places where the Bible uses language very creatively, and the ancient context of the Bible helps the meaning snap into focus. There are different scholarly discussions about details of this scene. Some focus on why the wise men could not interpret words that Daniel could read. Others explore connections between this story and other ancient texts, where mysterious writings appear as a sign of divine judgment. Some scholars suggest that the words were written in a way that scrambled their usual order or sounded like a riddle, so that only someone with the right kind of insight could unlock them. The Bible does not answer every question, yet it clearly presents the contrast between human wisdom and the wisdom that comes from God. Historically, this story sits right at the turning point between empires. While Belshazzar celebrates inside the city, The armies of the Medes and Persians are apparently preparing their final move. Ancient historians describe how Babylon fell in a swift and surprising way. The story of Daniel uses that backdrop to show an empire that believes it is secure, while its foundations are crumbling. By using temple cups from Jerusalem for a party, Belshazzar symbolically declares that the God of Israel has been defeated, yet the writing on the wall announces the opposite. In the biblical background, the fall of Babylon is not random. It is a moment when arrogance finally collides with justice. Seen this way, the writing on the wall is more than a spooky miracle at a party. It becomes a visual summary of a major theme in the Bible, explained through a single, unforgettable image. Powerful rulers can ignore history, they can pretend the past does not apply to them, yet their time is still numbered. Societies can weigh themselves and declare themselves successful, yet another scale may reveal something very different. The mysterious phrase MENE MENE TEKEL UPHARSIN turns into a compressed story. Days are numbered, hearts are weighed, kingdoms are divided. Today the English expression writing on the wall is used for any situation where the outcome is obvious, even if people choose to ignore it. The story in Daniel, however, adds an extra layer of meaning. The writing on the wall is not just a prediction of collapse. It is a call to pay attention to the deeper reality beneath comfort and power. When we look at this scene through its ancient context, its Aramaic wordplay, and its place in the larger biblical narrative, the hand on the wall becomes like a mirror. It asks every generation what it trusts, what it celebrates, and what it chooses to ignore. So the next time you hear someone talk about the writing on the wall, you can remember that behind that phrase sits a crowded hall in Babylon, a frightened king, a mysterious message, and an exile named Daniel who reads the hidden meaning. The story invites us not only to study ancient words, but also to pay attention to the signs that our own lives and societies might be quietly sending.